The emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test. This is our high station. If exposed, remove from the
Podcast for the curious mind. I don't know what that means.
Broadcasting live from it's a Chinese-made microphone today. Hi, Top Sioux Nation. I am Corey here with May. How's it going, May? Welcome aboard.
Howdy.
And Clemens. How you guys doing today?
Good.
Happy Sunday morning. This is it's quite a show. But it's a long time coming. You know, I'm checking things off the list here. And everyone knows about the Columbine shooting that happened. The Columbine massacre. So we're going to do a little dive in it because it was interesting to see the reaction after the Las Vegas episode we did with the shooting that happened there. And some of the videos that are available on the internet of, incidents that, the shooters and the gunshots and all of that stuff. So I decided, well, let's take a look at some other shootings and see if there are any type of similarities. And the first real shooting I ever thought of growing up was the Columbine shooting. That's the first time I remember a mass shooting. I'm sure there was before that. I was born in 1987. Obviously, the Oklahoma bombing. Yeah, I remember that, and I was like, oh, that was 1995, so I was probably, 8 years old when that happened, 7, 8 years old when the Oklahoma bombing happened. So I remember seeing
when
that.
They set him up? Oh.
No, and see, and there's a lot of interest. There's an interesting trail that leads back to Waco. It's like Waco, Oklahoma City bombing, Ruby Ridge, Columbine shooting. But the one that
sniper too.
DC
he was
sniper?
in there too.
Yeah. But wasn't that when was the DC sniper? 04, 05?
Yeah, it was a little later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to say I was in high school. Yeah.
When Columbine happened? Or
no,
when
DC sniper.
Yeah. I was in high school when the Columbine thing happened. That was like 99.
Yep, 99.
Yeah, I remember driving past the school with my grandpa, not right out, but a week or so. We'd come in because my grandparents lived in Inglewood and stuff, and I don't know why we were over there. But yeah, I remember driving past the school and seeing it all, and not knowing anything, but grandpa saying, hey, there's Columbine School, and whatnot. But
you remember it
not registering it as a kid.
Do you remember it being closed off, or was it
the plywood and stuff was up, and it was definitely it was. I don't remember it being I'm trying to think. I just remember looking and just seeing a bunch of plywood up and tape everywhere, but that was it. Nothing.
Was it was that your first recognition of hearing the word Columbine, or had they talked about it in school before that? And so when you drove past it, you already knew what he was talking about?
No, because when it happened, I think we were living in North Carolina, and I want to say my mom was watching Oprah or something, and we come into the house, and it had broke the news, and we just we were all just kind of sitting there and watching the TV and whatnot, and then fast forward, we go visit my grandparents in Colorado, and like I said, grandpa's taking us out. We're running errands or we're doing something, and we drive past the school, the high school, and he just points it out, and I think it just clicked from Um, just seeing it on TV, and being, and then driving past it, you kind of like, but I don't. I mean, what was it, 99? So I don't.
1999. Yep. How old were
Yeah,
you?
I'm 34,
No,
so
I mean, how old were you when it happened?
I was born in '89, 10. So
10 years old. And
So
what about you, Clemens?
I was 16 and I was in school, and it was a big deal. Like I well, I was happy because they let everybody out of school because they were afraid something else was going to happen somewhere else. Um, like why I never
And
knew.
you were in Iowa at that time, so
Yeah,
it's
I was.
like the far-reaching effect of that day.
Yeah, and they told us like in school. They told us that this was happening and that they were sending everybody home, and it was like in the afternoon. So I was like, sweet, and I ended up going home, and then that's when I like learned about it on CNN. So, and I don't think I'll ever forget, but like the one thing that always sticks out to me every time I hear about Columbine is that kid with the white shirt, like jumping out the window. And like his whole shirt is like the front of him is like full of blood, and it looks like it looks like a police officer or something is like pulling him out of the window, and he's like,
yeah,
um, I don't know, like that still to this day. Like I still remember that like it was yesterday. So
that's weird because clips like that stick with you. Like now that you say that, I could process it, and then like when you think of like the twin towers falling and the
yeah,
people jumping out of the towers, like just
yeah, that's
stuff
another
like
one.
that, kind of. Yeah,
Yeah. So
It's that's what's because I would have been 11, uh, maybe 12. No, I was 12 right then.
yeah. Because if you're born in '87, because I'm in '89, yeah.
Nope, I was 12. So I just remember hearing about it. I don't really remember much of a reaction.
Because were
Other,
you in compound life at 12 still?
yeah,
So, yeah.
I think it was, it was sort of discussed within the church, as, this is just proof that the devil's taking over, a real strong religious undertones. I remember them emphasizing the fact that one of the girls had been asked if she believed in God
Yep.
and then was shot after she said yes. So it's like very strong religious undertones that I noticed, the church would talk about in like their literature. Went all the way up to like the headquarters, and I can't remember. I don't think any of them were witnesses. Because if one of them was like a witness that had been really blown to kingdom come as a martyr, type of situation.
yeah.
And you saw that a lot where it was sort of politicized almost immediately. Do you guys remember like what when it came to the two guys, Eric Harris being one, and it was what was it, Dylan Klebold was the other one. Do you guys remember any any type of like repercussions or talking about them? Any details?
Now that you say that, I remember the trench coat mafia. Like that was a huge thing. Like I don't know. Like again, I was in Iowa, so it was it wasn't so like close to home, and so a lot more people were talking freely about it. So um, those kind of things, like when people wore like trench coats or wore like it
Yeah.
was always associated with those things, and like our school, like if they didn't allow people to wear trench coats for a while like at
Oh,
school.
really?
Yeah, they wouldn't. We couldn't. So I don't know, I can't remember if it was the news that labeled it the trench coat mafia, but like you saying that like made me think of that, because I think that isn't that where that I don't know, I thought
It does
that's
come
where
from there. Yep, it
yeah.
does come from there. I remember violent video games being blamed for it. The kids, I
Mhm.
guess, played Doom,
Yep.
and like you could design your own maps. And there was a rumor they had created a map that was the exact
Cool, right?
layout. of the
Yeah.
school,
Yeah.
right? So I remember, yeah, and then of course guns. That was like, and even the NRA was like supposed to hold an event like a couple weeks after that they had planned before Columbine happened. And even the NRA, which is like arguably America's largest lobby for gun rights, or that's what they claim, um, like postponed their convention because of how everyone was freaking out about the guns. It was crazy. I remember there was I would say there was before 9/11, because 9/11 happens, what, a year and a half later, 2 years later, somewhere around there. And but before that, Columbine sat, I think, with a lot of people nationally a lot longer. Nowadays, there's school shootings and it's like, you
Yeah.
know, it's like, it's pretty rough. And then you've moved on.
Yeah, it
Um,
doesn't get as much attention. Like
no,
maybe a week, and then yeah, like everybody's moved on.
Is it sad to say because it's almost commonplace? Like we it
well,
happens and we're not
yes,
kind of shocked by it, and then
yes,
something else happens in this stupid world we live in, and they're like, oh, on to the next ticker tack thing that we have to now. There's a school shooting in Florida. Oh, now milk is $7 a gallon. And you kind of just shift your mind
you know,
to what bullshit's getting pushed out. So
Well, and there's a big tie to, like, from gun rights to school shootings. So like around, like, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like there's like always a like more news and things that are reported around times of election or when they want
oh,
to push some
100%.
sort of
Yeah.
agenda. They're like, oh well, if we didn't have AR type weapons with these large ammo capacities, then these things wouldn't happen. And it's like,
yeah. I gotta actually clip just to
that.
exactly
This is
what.
the exact same conversation we've been having since I was in high school. I was a junior when the Columbine shooting happened. I was part of the first generation that saw routine school shootings. We have now produced the second school shooting generation in this country. We dare not allow there to be a third. Something is broken, if it is even possible, for the same debate around the same solutions that we all know.
All right. So I mean, it's just showing it went hard political. It's a talking point to this day. And the reason why I think people like born after us or around that time that don't realize it, because it's a common day thing now. Not a common, it's pretty common. Is that Columbine had never happened like that before. I mean, we had a government building bombed. We had Waco. We had these incidents happening, but not to kids. It never had happened to kids. Like there had been like maybe some gang violence involved, shootings of that type in a school, but not for like a senseless. There was no real motive given. Do you remember why those kids, Dylan and Eric Harris, shot up the school? Like, do you remember any of the reasons you were told?
we were told it was because they were outcasts. Like,
Yeah.
and if and that's where the whole like inclusion thing started, and where we need to be friends with everybody because
I remember the anti-bullying thing,
yeah,
like growing up, like after, not right after, but I remember middle school and high school, like it was, hey, be friendly, stick up for people, don't bully people, treat everybody with the same respect. It was almost, you know, kill it with kindness.
yeah.
It was,
All right.
And it's like, so you mean to tell me that these two kids, like, they shot up an entire school, killed that many people because they were being bullied? Like, I, f- I feel like if I was like, and I'm always somebody that tries my best to put myself in somebody else's shoes, right? And this is kind of a bad situation. So, but if I were being bullied, and this is a whole reason I'm going through these these steps, right? To like potentially go through and cause chaos. Like my first targets are the people that have affected me or got me to the point of where we're at now. So like I guess it just makes me think like were all the people that got hurt like part of I mean were they the ones bullying these kids?
So we're going to go into how the public was exposed to what happened to Columbine versus some eyewitness accounts from kids that were there. So
Yeah,
it's
because didn't they say it started outside with the athletes, and then they were inside? Wasn't that what was pushed? You know.
so what's okay. So we're gonna go. Yes, the official narrative is that at 11:19, the boys have their two vehicles parked in separate locations. One's in the senior parking lot. I forget it, the other one was in a like there was a senior only parking lot, and then there was like a general area parking lot. Both of them parked in separate areas. Uh, then they meet up and they're walking in, and they shoot their first victim outside. And then at 11:19, the shooting inside the cafeteria begins. The boys work their way up from the cafeteria, up the stairs into the room above the cafeteria, which is the library. So they go up the stairs through some halls, randomly shooting into rooms, and then they end up in the library where I believe they kill seven. I think it's seven people are killed inside the library. So before they turn the guns on themselves at 12, I think it's 12:05, 12:09, somewhere around there. So less than an hour, all of this stuff happens. And then the boys are dead. So, and Jefferson County, there is no police department for Littleton, Colorado at this time. I don't know if there still is, which I found interesting. So there's no police department. So it's governed by Jefferson County Sheriff's Department. So they respond to all major calls. And there is an FBI office within their office.
Which would
That
make sense why people would have guns. Like just to say that. Like if you don't have a local police department there, then it would be more likely that law-abiding citizens around there would more than likely own at least one weapon.
Now, what do you guys know about the town of Littleton, Colorado?
I
So,
assume
say what?
I, s- I said I assume it's little.
It's a town of 40,000 people. So,
Decent size.
decent sized town. There is a big factory there. You may have heard of it. It's called Lockheed Martin.
Oh yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, Lockheed Martin employs 10,000 people. So, if you like do the math and then like there's two kids to every household, pretty much everyone's employed by Lockheed Martin out there.
Yeah.
A
So,
quarter of the population, yeah.
yeah, quarter of the population. So, big deciding factor in the town of Littleton, Colorado. That's, the local shop that's keeping the town alive. If they were ever to close up, they'd be out of, so that's, and so I've actually got, and this is like, I just, like to sort of emphasize like the seriousness of this, like they didn't release it at first, but eventually they did release certain videos and recordings. But what's interesting is what's talked about very little is that at 11 o'clock, a bomb goes off about 3 miles south of Columbine. Did you guys ever remember hearing about that?
No.
So a bomb goes off in the middle, not in the middle of the road, but like, in the median between a 4-lane highway. And there's audio tapes of people calling into 911 saying, "Hey, it looks like there's some accident that happened, or we just saw some sort of explosion." And this call, these calls come in for about 5 minutes, before the fire department gets there, and they're like, well, it's like a pipe bomb, or, you know,
I mean,
no,
it makes sense though, right? But it makes sense, but it doesn't. Like, we put ourselves in their shoes, right? Like, if you set a bomb off 3 5 miles away from where your main target is, you're gonna send every resource to that bomb, and then you're gonna do your most damage at the school. But if the timeline doesn't add up, where the bomb went off maybe too late, and then they ended up killing themselves, I mean that'll be because I just not just, but like I think the Daily Wire had that movie they produced of a school shooting, kind of. I don't know if it was representing Columbine, but in the movie, the group of people that do the school shooting, they set off a a a car bomb, and it brings the whole police department, the fire, it brings everybody to that thing because it catches a field on fire too. So it's all the resources are going to set off, to do the thing while they're destroying the kids and the high school. You know what I mean? Like they're building up their barricades. They're doing everything they need to do to solidify the high school for when the cops and stuff get done handling that they're already set up, to defend the cops through the high school and to take out, the targets at the school. But I mean, it makes sense
and they
to
do
do that.
accredit it to them. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it is accredited that they planted a bomb as a distractionary device that went off around 11 o'clock. The problem was that it was so close to the school shooting time happening that it really didn't. Official records say it didn't detract from them getting a response team to the Columbine, almost still immediately.
Yeah.
You're muted there, Mike.
Oh, sorry. Quick question about this. Like, so this is a distraction bomb. Like, and these are
Right.
like, keep in mind, like, these are kids who, I mean, kids try their best to think ahead, right? And think of like multiple steps ahead. So I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around like these kids like thought of taking a video game like Doom and like building an entire thing like that replicates their school so that way they can plan ahead on doing this and not having any sort of targets in mind, and like it's a multi-step process. So to me it's just like I don't know. I'm having a hard time. Like, do they have, like, were their parents like in the military? Do they have any sort of military training or police training or anything? Because
Well,
I don't think a 16-year-old would think of like, hey, let's think of a bomb
right.
and have it blow up a block away, so that way we can do all this.
So,
Yeah.
Eric Harris, his father, was 20 years in the Air Force as an Air Force transport pilot.
Oh, okay.
And he traveled to 5 different bases growing up. The last base he was at, he complained to a coworker about headaches he had been getting from testing they were doing. And then he retired after that assignment and moved to Littleton and then worked as a contractor for Lockheed Martin. So there's something interesting there. And then he knew that Eric Harris was making bombs and decided it'd be a good father-son bonding moment if they just made a bomb together.
Oh.
Yeah.
So there's
I mean, this was the 90s, right? I mean,
this
so
was the 90s. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Now it's interesting because I listened to a podcast where the one of the co-hosts is a ex FBI agent that worked the case of Columbine and was there for 3 or 4 days. And she made it very clear that she didn't understand why people wanted to imitate these 2 kids because they were failures. They wanted an Oklahoma City style bombing. And if you read in the basement tapes, that was their whole goal. It was going to be bigger and better than the Oklahoma City bombing. They planted 3 bombs, 20
in the
pound
school, right?
20-pound bombs in the school, one at the internal pillars inside the cafeteria, and one inside the kitchen. And none of those go off because they were losers, and they didn't set the timing device right, and they made, just fucking idiots. I'm not kidding. This is a podcast. It's her perspective of it. So they should be remembered as failures, because once they realized the bombs hadn't gone off at 11:19, they decided to just go ahead and cause as much havoc as they can, and then they died like losers after nothing worked to their plans, and the whole accounts of there being a third shooter and all of that stuff is just they just want it to be bigger than it is, and that's the official. I mean, like, that's the official narrative to this day. If you read any of the newspapers, or go online and read the accounts of the official decision of Jefferson County in the investigation, it was 2 shooters. They turns out Trenchcoat Mafia, they weren't a part of it. Had never been a part of it.
So bullied kids end up lashing out, right, in this Columbine shooting, and then now when we talk about it, we're gonna continue to bully them. Like, that's kind of messed up to me.
Just slam dunking on them. Just
Like, man.
Okay, so that's that's the official narrative, is that there was 2 shooters. They released so these records were all classified and not allowed to be shown to the public. And then a judge decreed that they had to wait 2 years. And then they decreed you had to wait like 5 years or something like that. And then it went to 25 years. And they kept delaying the release of these documents. So they did in 2017, I believe it was, I think it was 2017. They did release 11,000 documents, which included
18 years.
Which included heavily redacted names.
Yeah.
A lot of things just completely removed. And so there's some very weird vibes I get from it. So we were talking about the Las Vegas shooting and how there was no way it was just one person. I think we all determined that no matter what happened out there, it wasn't just one person, and it probably wasn't the dude that was laying dead in the hotel floor that did it. So I was curious, with the most influential shooting in school history, that still 20 years later, 20 plus years later, is still being talked about, even in the, as a political driving movement for the voting class, which is the millennials who went through that. All millennials will remember a icky feeling when they hear the word Columbine, because of what happened that day. That happened in a town. Now, it's interesting. Like, let me get this. So, Poppy's been doing a little research on Columbine. And I think there's a lot more to Columbine, fellas, than that meets the eye. A lot more. Now, this is according to the AP, when the Pentagon ordered construction of the nation's first intercontinental missile factory in a secluded canyon called Littleton. The factory is now owned by Lockheed Martin, where more than 10,000 employees, population 39,000, now build unmanned rocket satellites for telecommunications and space exploration, as well as classified military projects. Also in Littleton, National Digital Television Center, the research arm of the telecommunications industry. That's the press release from the AP News when the contract was released, what it would be used for. The Pentagon. So that was in the 50s, right? When this was designed. Now we've talked about MK Ultra and mind control projects that were going on in the West Coast with Jolly West, and they were heavily using the Air Force as their arm to conduct these tests. And that's well documented as far as the type of test Jolly West was involved in. And so that's an interesting factor. Now, the fact that Eric Harris's father complained about getting headaches.
Yeah.
And if you remember when we did the episode on, what was that? What was that one? Shaver. When the Shaver episode with the type of subject they were looking for, he went into the doctor to visit Jolly West for migraines. So that's a correlation, not causation. Just, some interesting background, I think, that should be known. Now, obviously, we have the testimony of Eric Harris's father, Wayne Harris, right? When they did investigations on him. But there isn't. It's still classified to this day.
The testimony is?
The testimony is still classified to this day. And I stumbled across the interview of the guy that actually interviewed him. And give me a second here to pull it up. So what happened after the shooting is that parents sued the other parents, because that's just what we Americans do in a horrible tragedy. Is we're going to go sue the parents that raise these horrible kids. So.
And get what? I mean,
give me a second here while I get it.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, what happened to the parents? Like, did they? I mean, I would assume they'd probably move away at the very least, right?
Yeah, but you can't shake that. I mean, you know what I mean? Like you could move away and stuff, but like
it was national, yeah. Like
once
everybody knew about
the
it.
internet and everything got super popular and you could just instantly plug that in, like you can't hide from it. You know what I mean? Like they're like you're gonna go start a new life in Bozeman, Montana, and you're gonna meet somebody and they're just gonna be like, oh man, blah blah blah. You're gonna punch them into Google. You're gonna get a list, and they're like, "Oh, that's like you can't run from that."
I think it was like Excite or Yahoo back then, but on the old Netscape Navigator. But yeah, you're right. Like the internet was just starting,
Yeah,
and like that was so yeah, like that could be another good reason why this got such big attention is because it was one of the first things that many people knew about.
Okay, before we go into this, we have my girlfriend discovered these archived interviews with some of the witnesses, which I started listening to because here's the list right here of over so I've heard claims of over 100, but I've got written over 62 as they've been slow released out. So up to 62, but according to other people, it's well over 100. So over 100 witnesses that day discuss a third shooter.
When did they?
Multiple shooters. Immediately after the shooting, they were being investigated by the police. So, and this is just a discussion of
those are the clips to get because when they interview the kids or whatever right off the bat, like a lot of them are just going to speak freely and not really think, and then those videos will disappear from the face of the earth because it won't fit the narrative. that they're pushing or that they want us to all gobble down. Like,
Kids
yeah, that's
don't know what to make up. So
yeah,
they're
exactly.
not going to make anything up. They're
Yeah.
going to tell you exactly what they saw. So yeah, like that's gold.
Because
These
because the interviews I remember are just um about the cafeteria book bags or whatever that were left like in random table. You know what I mean? Like I can I could picture it in my head right now of a girl they interviewed, and she noticed um that there was like random backpacks, placed in the cafeteria, just random. Like it was odd, And but at that, like you're not processing. Hey, there's just a unmanned backpack by that pillar over there. Like you don't really think about it. You think maybe somebody set it down to go get breakfast pizza, and we'll come back to it. You don't think that there's a fucking bomb in there ready to go. So
Well,
uh,
adults. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
well, I want to read what some of these witnesses said, besides just like theorizing. Caitlin Sue Place said it was redacted, saying who she thought the shooter was. I'm almost positive of it. I remember looking him dead in the eye. He was in my debate class. Dylan kind of looked like Robert, but Dylan doesn't have the long face. Robert's teeth are messed up, and he was smiling, and I saw his teeth then. Kate said that she has seen pictures of Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris, and she said it's not one of them, referring to the person she saw shooting outside the comments. This is from Lacey Smith saying that she was 100% sure it was not Dylan Klebold that she saw shooting. Brennan Hooker said that one of the person was 6'8" to 6'11", very skinny, tight black pants, black trench coat. I mean, there's pages and pages of not just like I'm not sure, maybe, no, like absolutely not Eric Harris or Dylan Klebold. I mean, that's
6'11".
so what are they, pawns?
Yeah.
well, here's what's interesting. There was a lawyer that was hired by one of the mothers whose son had gotten shot. Now, her son, Mark Taylor, was in the library, got shot 7 times with 15 bullet wounds on his body, right around his heart, but all missing, and somehow survives. And like crazy, absolutely crazy. Survives the shooting. And well, they hire a lawyer to investigate Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold's parents because they want to see who they can sue, essentially. And so they find a lawyer out of Lincoln, Nebraska, very famous lawyer, was in the state Senate for like 10 years, well respected. Once he gets out of the state, he goes after a huge lawsuit in Nebraska, which we're going to discuss. But they hire this lawyer to come and do an investigation on the parents. And so he's the one that goes, and do you guys remember the basement tapes? Do you know what those are? Those are, whenever they're talking about it, they show them like out in the country shooting guns,
Oh
or
yeah,
like
yeah.
they're like walking around in
Practicing.
Yeah.
windows.
Okay. Yeah.
Those are called the basement tapes. This lawyer, John DeCamp, is the one that finds these basement tapes and in his depositions of the parents. So he's trying to find an angle with pharmaceuticals because, he figures they can sue pharmaceuticals for having these kids on medication. Well, that's interesting because I don't remember them ever bringing up the fact that Dylan Klebold and Eric Harris were on meds. Do you? You remember that?
Nope.
No.
Well, and in his investigation, what he finds out is that a year prior to the Columbine tragedy, the boys get in trouble with the law. Now these boys have been friends since middle school. So they, it gives you an idea. They've grown up through middle school into high school. They're of graduating age now, 17, 18. Um, the trench coat mafia that had been roaming through the halls of Columbine prior to that, like I think half of them graduated. And so, the group had, gotten quite smaller. And these boys were very much involved with the trench coat mafia. Let me see here. Yeah, so they're very much in. Let's see here. I want to get you an idea of a person that was there instead of me just telling you. So you guys talk about this. I'm going to get an audio clip pulled up here because I don't have it up because I'm not a pro.
This trench coat mafia, I'll have to. I don't. So this was. I mean, what was it? This was just a group in
This
high
trench
school.
coat, that's what they made it seem like. But it turns out that this trench coat mafia, it was widespread, especially in Germany. Like if you guys Google trench coat mafia in Germany, like this was very much a thing in the mid 90s. And so it now I I don't know about the links between that or what what that necessarily means
Yeah.
as far as the Columbine group. But we know that there's a lot of social testing going on in Germany uh, by us when they got to be their own country again. It was sort of the deal as we got to keep all of our secret bases there, and sort of a launch pad into social testing into other countries. Remember in the MK Ultra episode we did, the whole reason they started doing these studies was because they had developed ITNT, which was a spy network through Eastern Europe based out of Germany. And it was the Hungarians that arrested two people that were actually CIA operatives running tests. And for some reason, they didn't let those guys testify at all. And because of that, they testified that they were spies and they had been, conducting these tests based off of LSD. And it freaked out the government because they were wondering how they could get those guys to tell the truth. And they started the whole MK Ultra project where you could transfer, secret messages and all that stuff. I mean, we went down that wormhole a while ago. But what I'd found interesting about it, oh god dang it, let me I got distracted here. You guys go ahead and talk.
Well, so I was just curious if it was kind of like a fad or a group, like I remember, this is way off topic, but like Backstreet Boys and NSYNC was cool. Everyone was dressing like them, and like you could
Yeah.
see in like the school, like that's what that's what people were doing. So that's why I didn't know if this trench coat thing was like a worldwide spread thing where it was just like every kind of place had their own little, following or small cult in a sense. Because I don't remember hearing much or
In
really
my
knowing
school,
any of that.
in the school I went to, it was mostly like afterwards, like after people started hearing about it, then they started saying like that they were affiliated with the trench coat mafia and stuff. But it was
Oh, okay.
Okay,
But-
so here is I appreciate you guys filling time because I was like, I know I have it somewhere. I don't know where it is. I have about that. No, so this lady is Jen Thompson. She's one of the survivors. Survivors she wasn't in the library, she was in the science room, which was adjacent to the library. So just to give you an idea of where she was located. So I would feel like she would be considered a fair witness, don't you?
Okay.
Okay, so this is her account of how she remembers high school being with supposedly the trench coat mafia that doesn't exist. So any new report, CNN did a report to Columbine 20 years later, myths that were later proved false, and every single one of these type of articles I found online said they were not part of the trench coat mafia. All right, I'm going to play this clip. Let me know if you guys can hear it.
Afternoon.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show, because we were even talking off the air. I know how difficult this to go back and recall these traumatic memories, not just before the show, then during the show, but then it sticks with you even after the show too. So we said this is so important for the audience to know. So thank you so much for coming on the show.
This is the Oprah report. He was able to get an interview with her, and I listened to it.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to share the truth.
Yeah. So before we get into Columbine, tell us about yourself. Who is Jen Thompson?
Well, I'm a 39-year-old mom and wife. I've got a little single miracle baby living out in the outskirts of Parker, Colorado. I was born and raised in Littleton and grew up in a house right across the street from Columbine.
Ooh, right across the street. Wow. Then it really never ended, right? You had that memory going on every day till you moved, I guess.
Yeah, it was, especially while the media was around Columbine. They were right over and around my house as well for several months.
Oh my God. It never ended. Never ended. Before that tragic day, the shooting, did you know any of these people involved?
I knew their faces, and I had some brief encounters with some of them. Like Dylan and Eric would come out individually to the smoker's pit where I would hang out frequently with many of my friends. When they would come out, they would be by themselves, and they would hang out along the fence. So they were away from the group. Dylan would come out. He would never talk to anybody. Eric, he might say a few words and things, but he would usually pretty well keep to himself. There was a time where I tried to approach the whole trench coat group when they were collected at the end of the hallway. They had this special place they would always meet up with each other. And I went over to their group and I tried to talk to them, and they acted like they were too good for me, even though I'm wearing all black and I'm an art student and I'm, into similar music and things, and they shunned me. There was also a time where I was walking down the middle hallway, where most people didn't like using that hallway, so there wasn't generally a lot of people in that hallway at any time. I was walking to the south, and Dylan was walking to the north, and I saw that he was dressed similarly to me, wearing all black and probably in the same music. So I smiled at him, thinking I could befriend him. And he looked at me like he wanted to kill me.
So, does that sound like they weren't part of the trench coat mafia, guys?
No, it sounds like they were pretty active.
They were invested.
Yeah.
Why would they lie about that? Now, that's obviously, there's other interviews that talk about this trench coat mafia. Even when Wayne Harris calls in to the police saying he believes it's his son, the reason he says he believes it's his son is because he's part of the trench coat mafia. So that's the first thing I see that's like, well, that doesn't make any sense, obviously, to me. And then if we dive in a little bit more into this Jen Thomas interview, she talks about she has John DeCamp on this radio show, or no, that's Donna Taylor. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. She talks about, let me take a look at this clip on 14. Give me a second here. I got these roughly clipped out, but I just, I want to get your guys' reaction, because this is sort of the wormhole I've gone down with these with this whole
Well, to the point where you don't look like a crazy person. Girl told other people afterward, yes,
Afterward,
but
yeah.
I don't. It was time to ditch
Hmm.
because the quote said in German, "Prepare yourselves, for you're all going to die today."
Wow. And she never told anybody else?
Oh,
This is the morning of the shooting. It turns out that Dylan and Eric did the morning announcements every morning. Now, does that sound like someone who's like bullied and secluded? I don't know.
Antisocial people aren't gonna, you would think, would not want to partake in anything like that. Usually, with the people, so I remember in high school, the people who did the morning announcements were your social butterfly, your friendly yearbook stat. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't people that didn't want anybody to look at them or talk to them or give them the time of day. Like I mean, it's
Yeah.
kind of odd that um, that these would be your morning announcement, folks.
So this was the morning announcement of the day of the shooting. So April 20th, 1999. You guys, 420, obviously everyone thinks about weed. But do you also know what 420 stands for?
No.
It is Hitler's birthday.
people were behind those walls doing something.
Right, right. Now, what about this group again, the trench coat group? Did they have families that were in law enforcement and the military and stuff like that?
I wasn't told until afterward that I don't have it officially, but I've had other people tell me that they had heard the same thing, that Eric's uncle, his dad's brother, was a firefighter. And I want to say it was for like Arvada, somewhere up.
She cut out there a little bit.
Yeah, you really broke up there. Are you there?
Okay.
Yeah, you really.
Yeah.
You said something about Arvada. That.
Okay. I had heard that Eric had an uncle. His dad's brother was a firefighter for Arvada, which is just north of Denver, the metro area. So 20 minutes from Denver.
Now, what about this? The multimedia, this film group. Now, was that dominated by the trench coat group?
It was dominated mainly by Dylan and Eric because they were in this special class for it. They were also in charge of the daily announcements that came over. It was a video that came over everybody's TV in every classroom for about 5 minutes every Tuesday morning. And it said, or that Tuesday morning, it was the quote of the day. After all the announcements are made, there's always a quote of the day. And for Tuesday, April 20th, it was in German. And only the German exchange student knew what it said. She told me later on, she was, very adamant about never ditching or anything because she was an exchange student. She didn't want to ruin what she had going. And so when she saw that quote, then she decided it was time to ditch because the quote said in German, "Prepare yourselves, for you're all going to die today."
Wow.
Like you would think stuff like that would be looked over, right, by like administration before they pump it out to, the school. So that's just kind of odd, like that nobody caught that. Because in high school, what you could learn Spanish or German, or you could take those classes. I'm really surprised that nobody checked that and gave them the red light or green light. I mean, obviously, if they gave them the green light to go ahead and put that out there, but and then it goes to, do you rely on the exchange student to buy into what she's saying? Like that's just wild. I mean, yeah, that's.
Did they interview the German foreign exchange student? Because they were obviously like, well, I'm out.
Yeah.
You guys have a good one.
She said afterwards, she didn't tell anyone, but she felt regret she didn't, but she's like didn't know how to, how do you communicate that, and what if you're wrong, and you want to see, they're high schoolers, like not fully emotionally developed people yet,
And she's in a whole nother country, so she's probably like,
what the fuck?
these Americans are fucking crazy.
But it's just so weird that like even like with this and then with the Las Vegas shooting with the lady trying to warn people like that people are about to die, and you just kind of as us humans we're like, yeah, like do you take that and run with the panic, or do you brush it off like, oh, that she finally got some Rocky Mountain High in her, and it is what it is. But it's, I mean, that's wild. And two, I would hate if it is true, and whatnot. I would hate to live with that. To know that you can translate that and understand what that is, and you just, like you thought of yourself, which hey, you understand it, so that it's time. It's time to peace. But then the fact that you didn't try to tell anybody, um, that would be tough to live with, because even if you did tell people and nobody listened because they would just thought you were, BSing or trying to blow smoke, like that's tough. That I would not want to be her. No, I'm
Well,
not walking a mile in those shoes.
yeah. Well, and it also is an instance too where, I mean, there's so the once again the trench coat mafia she brings up. So like they were in a special class for it. Did you know she said that?
I miss that. They're
You
in a
know?
special class.
Yeah, she said, yeah, something about them being in a special class. And like I said, this is the Offerman report, so feel free to go and take a look at it. And then like this whole, so they lie. They're currently lying. They're currently lying about the whole trench coat mafia, saying that they were never part of the trench coat mafia. They weren't even in the class picture of '98. Well, I mean, I think the class picture of '98 isn't the same as what would have been '99, and the fact that they were walking around, hanging out, dressing as trench coat mafia. Man, why would you lie about that?
Was a group looked at like a theatrical group, or like, because I mean, it kind of that's kind of where I'm going with it, with with her saying that she felt like she would fit in because she was in theater, or an art
She's
student, and
artsy, yeah.
yeah, she was in art, and she wore
Into
black
death
and listened to that
metal.
music.
Yeah.
Pretty
Yeah.
much the goth. Remember,
Yeah.
like that, the goth. But I don't understand, because here, like, we love to associate everything with a group. Why aren't they? Oh yeah, it is the trench coat. Why are they so adamant on no, 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 no? Like it is not the trench coat. That's what I'm not grasping here, is why, like normally they want to, if it's 9/11 or this or that, it's always a group. They want to hurry up and assign it to somebody or something. And for here, they're like, they don't even want to touch it with a 10-foot pole on this trench coat
And,
mafia.
and the second narrative is that they were unpopular and bullied. Now, here's part of the basement tapes. Very few selections.
Never be like, hey, what's that?
I mean, does that look like a group of kids?
Yeah, cool, man. How cute are they? They're in a 7-layer burrito. Shut up. She ate a 7-layer burrito. And then she fell asleep on her break. And she ate this 7-layer burrito right before her break. She woke up because her mouth was bleeding like a break. Oh God, no, I don't want to. I'm falling asleep listening.
I'm playing those to give you an idea of, these are supposedly, the months leading up to this ferocious attack. Do we feel like these kids are like super unpopular and being bullied at school? Or...
Well, so those tapes are of Dylan and the other kid like videotaping their
Mhm.
classmates.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that doesn't seem
Part of
like
it.
antisocial. Don't fucking look at me. Don't come my way. That seems like, you know, that seems very kind of friendly. You know,
Well, yeah, because if
common
I were to
ground with your
walk up,
classmates.
yeah, you walk up to like a group that you're not used to conversating with, and it's not like they're gonna reject you, but most people are gonna look at you. It's gonna get quiet. They're gonna be like, "Yeah, hey," but they
What's with the
didn't.
camera? Yeah.
Right. But these kids, they didn't miss a beat. They carried on with their conversation as if they were always there. Like they were interacting, they were looking back,
The one dude
having eye contact.
smiled. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, like it's
He smiles
know,
at the person behind the camera, not even the
yeah,
camera.
yeah.
Like, so they're obviously comfortable.
hmm
That's a lot different than what we're gonna hear, and we're gonna play Jen Taylor's account of her experience in the library that day, and her perspective. Give me a sec here, pull it up. Boop. There we go.
My way to class, I saw Isaiah Scholes for the very last time. He and I are both short, so he was waving across the crowded hallway, standing on his tiptoes. I went into class, started to take the test, and a few minutes into the test, it's probably about 11:15 is when that class started. So 11:20-ish, one of the teachers comes up to our door. We have two doors to the classroom, and I'm sitting next to the front one. And the teacher, Mrs. Miller, taps on the glass and gives the teacher the come here finger because his desk is straight from that door. He runs out. He leaves. He went to go tell others and warn others, but he just left us.
Wow. So, already bet. I don't mean to laugh, but I mean, teacher just was like, peace.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we were trapped in there from 11:20 till 2:57. Now, I had prepared mentally for this somehow, some way. My intuition told me to. So I was being super vigilant. I was not letting the fear take over when, the fire alarm went off and the stampede of people came up from the cafeteria just before the fire alarm goes off. And we're hearing all people events. And senior pranks. This is the time of year for senior pranks. It's probably what's going on. But as soon as we heard that fire alarm, we're like, okay, maybe not. Maybe it's not. Should we be running too? So I go out in the hallway to see if we should be running out of the building as well. And the teacher that had asked Mr. Peterson, my teacher, to come out, Mrs. Miller, she's at the end of the hallway about 25 feet. Says, "There's get back in the classroom and hide. I'm going to lock your doors." So I go back in the classroom with the two boys that had followed me into the hallway and tell the rest of our class, there's guys with guns and we need to hide. They're going to lock our doors. We need to get down. And so we went into the back corner of the room where it conjoined with another classroom. So we had two classes kind of huddled together on the floor, and we weren't really hiding. So we started flipping tables. It was science class, so we had big tables that were like 5 feet by 3 feet. So we made a barricade with the table so that anybody that walked by our in the hallway couldn't look into our doors and just see us sitting there.
Now, whose idea was that? Did certain kids take up leadership positions and say, hey, let's do this?
Help make a barricade. I remember him saying, help her do this because everybody else was like deer in headlights.
Right.
Most people just froze up. They didn't know what to do. They were just terrified and, silent. So nobody really wanted to take over. We had 3 teachers that were all on the other side of the door. So my group, my class, didn't really have a teacher watching over them. The teachers that were, present in our group that were on the other side of the door were more concerned with Mr. Sanders, because as soon as the teacher had locked our doors to the hallway, Mr. Sanders had gone by, and I had looked out the second hallway door window and saw a trail of blood that led to that classroom. So, of course, the gunman could follow that trail. And
So, Mr. Sanders is the teacher that died in Columbine. He bled out.
Was he the one that left? He was the one that left the room, right?
No, that was a different teacher. But Mr. Sanders was the one that got shot and in the back as he was going down the hall. And there's, I don't know if you guys remember the signs on the windows on the, in the media where the kids had held up signs, help, bleeding out, person dying inside. It took him like 2.5 hours to die. So, and like there was students that were trying to pack his wounds and stop the bleeding. And, what's interesting is the time response. The kids kill themselves at 12:00, I can't remember, 12:09, something around there, around 12 o'clock. And then it's another 2.5, 3 hours before the SWAT team shows up and gets them out. Not that they're not there. They're there for the whole 4 or 5 hours, but none of them want to enter. They're like taking sniper positions and taking pot shots at the kids, or not at the, not the students, but, at the shooters, supposedly. So
are they trying to set the stage?
Well, and the excuse was that there was bombs. A bomb had gone off on the highway, and these kids had brought over 90 bombs to school. They were loaded with bombs. She confirms this in her, and they knew that. And so the whole reason they didn't want to go in is because it could be unsafe. It could be booby trapped. And it was booby trapped. The entire school had been booby trapped. So that's curious in on of its own. And then the vehicles that they had parked that morning had been filled with explosives and set to detonate. And one goes off at 11:18 p.m.
So they had no real targets in mind. This was just a matter of I want to have as much destruction and as I can, essentially.
Well, yes, yep. And Jen Thompson sort of gives that idea as she's watching this unfold from her science room.
they did. Because later on, I was looking in between the tables to look out the hallway. I was, looking at my classroom, what was going on. I was looking out the window, trying to be vigilant. And I would peek in between the tables, sincerely felt like a little spy because, I'm looking through the slit in between the tables. And I see these people outside my classroom. I see Dylan, and he's got his back to me. And he's kind of like bouncing around, agitated and upset. And then another person comes up to talk to him. As soon as I saw this other person, I thought, this is help. We're being saved. This looks like some guy in the military. It looked like a cop had taken off his uniform and just had his white T-shirt on to be less intimidating. And I'm telling my group, I think it's over now. I think we're being saved. This is just before noon, and at 11:45. I'm thinking, yeah, great.
Let me stop you there. Let me stop you there.
Okay.
Now, you saw Dylan. Now, this other gentleman you saw, was he older than Dylan?
He was much older, yes. I want to say he was in his late 20s to early 30s. I thought he was a police officer or somebody who had been in the military because of his thick neck and muscles and his buzz cut.
Gotcha. Now, what about any paraphernalia, like any kind of gear?
The reason why I knew he wasn't help was because when he was talking to Dylan, he held up his hands at one point to say, "I don't know," and he was holding a sawed-off shotgun with a tan handle. And that's when I told my friends, all my group, my heart sank. That this isn't help. That he's one of the gunmen. There's more than one.
And this wasn't someone who was like from the school that was part of this trench coat group.
No, it's definitely not. This is not anybody I had ever seen before. And I had just seen Eric.
Right.
I had seen Eric at 11:05, 11:10, and this was at 11:45. Yeah, I know it was definitely not Eric.
So there was somebody else with them, like an adult.
There's witness accounts that said that there was 5 men on top of the hill. And one of them, older gentleman, was yelling, "Go, go, go, go," as they went into the cafeteria and then through the backside entrance there.
Really?
Now you're asking yourself, well, why didn't she come forward with this testimony? Why wasn't this discussed? I guess. I'll move it up. Actually, I feel like just out of respect, maybe if you guys want, I can stop playing it. Otherwise, I can play a little bit more of what she experiences in the hallway there.
Yeah, keep playing
Okay. All right.
Okay. So, and what were Eric and Dylan wearing? Were they wearing T-shirts as well? What were they wearing?
Eric was actually wearing.
Once again, this is Opperman report. If you want to listen to the whole interview, great interview.
A white T-shirt, the same kind of style, white, short sleeve, no pocket, just a regular undershirt. But Eric had, what is that called? The gun straps,
right?
Like around his shoulders. So he would have that black stripe on the front of his chest. This guy didn't have that. This guy was also so buff that his sleeves on his arms were tight around his muscles. Now, if you look at any pictures of Eric that day, you can see the gun straps that he's wearing, and you can also see how baggy the T-shirt is on his boobs. It is not the same person.
Well, clearly, yeah, this memory's burned into your memory, this vision here, so there's no doubt about that. Oh, okay, so then what happened? Did you see where this third person went?
Well, they were talking about wanting to get into the classroom because of the trail of blood, and they were using the butts of their guns to try and break the handle, and that wasn't working, and they didn't want to shoot it because of the metal handle and the shrapnel, so they decided to leave a pipe bomb there and run off. They ran down further down in the south
side. That's the kids?
Yeah, that's the kids right there. She's talking about the picture.
Period. But if you go to the right, then you'll just go down the main part of the science wing. And that's where they went down to just get away from the bomb because it actually went off.
Right.
It set it on fire and everything. And thankfully I was paying attention to that. And I told Mrs. Miller about it. Mrs. Miller, wonderful, wonderful person. I don't know what I would have done that day without her. She literally saved our lives. Mr. Sanders, he warned us first.
Oh, you're right.
Got to give him lots of praise. He saved hundreds of people, but Mrs. Miller, she really helped us so much by locking the doors. And then she also went out and took the huge fire extinguisher and put out the pipe bomb fire before the boys came back and got back to safety.
Incredible.
She was amazing.
Let me interrupt you. That is amazing. Let me interrupt you now. Okay. Now you saw this gentleman in the white shirt with the muscles. Okay. Now, what about the people around you? Did anybody else? Did anybody else acknowledge this third person? What about Mrs. Miller, Mr. Sanders? Did anybody else acknowledge this third person?
There were other students that were with me that were sitting next to me. I believe John and I thought like Kyle Gumry and Aaron Walton. These people, when I said that there was somebody out there that looked like help, they wanted to see as well. So they looked out in between the tables and they saw this person as well. Mr. Sanders, he didn't really talk. The only thing that I ever heard that he had said was at 1:30 p.m. I asked how he was doing, and they said he's not doing so well. We pulled out some pictures of his family out of his wallet, and he just said, "Tell my girls I love them."
Quite the eyewitness account, especially to have all that going on in the room right next to you. You know,
Is she the only one, interview wise, that you've been able to find that talks about this third shooter?
no,
Or so
no,
there's
no,
multiple people?
no. There's over 63 on record that I can find.
I know, but that describe that him in the same manner, so we know that it's, that he's been seen multiple times. Not like the another person's going to be like, well, he was tall and skinny without muscles, or I mean, I guess if there was more than three and there was closer to five.
No, Robert Perry fits that description. A lot of people describe a third person as Robert Perry, who had. So it's the belief is Eric Harris, Dylan Klebold, Robert Perry, Chris Watts. It's all allegedly, Robert Perry was detained and then released by the police. And then there was a group of not older men when I say, but like older in the sense of high schoolers, not high schoolers, but like in their mid 20s that were seen outside by one of the parks. And what's interesting about some of this is that there is a 3-hour wait before police or SWAT enters. So in between that 3 hours, I mean, doesn't that just sort of feel like Las Vegas where they're just sitting there for an extended period of time?
Uvalde. I mean, it all just
Uvalde.
sounds, yeah, like I don't understand. You take an oath to protect and serve, but like knowing that, like you could die, right? But that is that's part of the fine print, and then you don't do it. You just kind of sit on your hands. Like you already signed up for this, got into this knowing that your day might come, and you could die, and you're supposed to protect and serve. So if you have to protect and you become a casualty in protecting these young people, like I mean, that's the trade-off, unfortunately. But just to sit pat, to sit still, to be like, fuck the youth, like what are we doing here? Just-
It gets worse. This is her account of telling the sheriff's department what she saw that day.
is it playing?
Yeah, I don't hear anything.
Corey, we don't hear anything.
Oh, you don't hear anything?
No.
Thank you. Okay.
I was
Okay.
like,
My bad. I forgot to add it back in. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Okay. So she's talking about how when they took her out of the high school, they didn't cover any of the dead bodies. And they brought him to the cafeteria, and then they had to walk out, and she didn't have shoes on. So, like, she was going to step on broken glass, so they had to piggyback her. Anyway, it's yeah, that's where we're
Well,
at.
let me ask you a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Now, is your experience since this day in dealing with the authorities and their unwillingness to accept your story, do you think it's possible that they did this to traumatize you further, that you would forget what you saw?
I don't know. I that's an interesting way of looking at it. I've never thought of it like that, really. I think that they were just set on having their official report have everybody on the same page in the report saying the same things. because and they tried to convince over 100 people that they didn't see people that they saw that day. So I wasn't the only one, but they wanted it. It was interesting because they would come to my house and do, their interviews with me and show me photo lineups. And the third time that I talked to them, they asked me to come down to the station. And looking back, I understand why they did that, because they had me go through my statement, and then they insisted that I change my story, that I didn't see Robert bring in the duffel bag, and that I didn't see this other person, this military-looking guy. It was definitely Eric in their narrative. And then I'm sitting there with my mom. I'm 15 years old, and my mom is asking them why are you so adamant that she changes her story when she knows what she saw and she's trying to tell you what she saw. And how she also mentioned how the cafeteria videos got leaked to the media when it was only in the police's custody. So there's a part in the final report from one of the investigators who wrote, "It seemed as though Nancy and Jennifer questioned the credibility of the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department." And yeah, we did. We most definitely did, because when I went into that station that day, when I wouldn't change my story, that officer got really upset. He was mad at me. He was trying to intimidate me and tell me later on, after a traumatizing situation, it's hard to admit when you're wrong. And then another cop overheard that I wasn't going to change my story, so he came over to back up his buddy to try and pressure me some more. And my mom and I weren't having it. No, they had told me I was one of their most credible witnesses that day. In the 3.5 hours that I was trapped inside the school, everything that I say happened. They had evidence to back it up, happening within 2 minutes of when I said it happened. But I didn't see this guy or this guy.
This may be a little no, I don't think it's off topic. Like it makes me like hearing this, it makes me question, like, with school shootings today, is there a correlation with school, like the cell phone policy? Because I feel like in today's world, if something like this were to happen, many students have cell phones and a lot of this stuff would have been recorded. But it made me think, like, listening to her talk, like, unfortunately, school shootings still happen today. There is a, most recent one that I remember, was that Jewish school. And like, it makes me wonder, like, is this, like, are the schools that are being targeted, like, is there cell phone policy, like no cell phones allowed? Like, does that determine like the age? And I don't know, it just makes me think, like, because I feel like if there's a high school or a school like this that this were to happen to again, they would have a lot more evidence because kids would grab their cell phone and start recording. Like, you know what I mean?
I mean, if you do look at it, I mean, that Nashville shooting was young kids, like no,
Yeah,
right?
like
Wasn't it?
they
Like it
they
was
wouldn't have cell phones.
no.
That's what I mean. Like, does that now have some sort of like backing? Like, is that
That's kind of wild. I mean,
We're going to
no footage. You can paint your own picture.
that's
exactly?
that's a
Exactly.
that's very interesting. That's very, I mean, obviously, like, distraction for kids in school. You want them playing on their phones, but it would hamper. And also, does it explain why the shootings are happening to a younger generation of kids? These are high schoolers. Now we're hitting middle schools.
Well, that goes back to what Clement said is if you hit the middle schooler and the elementary school, there's no other side proof. It's what they want to push out and what they want to send, because middle schoolers, elementary kids, like, yeah, some of them might have cell phones, but they're not going to think to pull it out like if they were 16 or 15 through 18 or 17 in high school. You're gonna go live on it right off the bat. Like a middle school and elementary school, all panic, all that sets in. This isn't a TikTok you're filming. Like, this is It's just sheer chaos, and it's just
Yeah.
you
Could you
know.
imagine the views? Like if you went live during a school shooting, how many like you would have millions of people like tuning into that live event. That's what I'm saying. Like if you have a to your point, yeah, middle school or elementary school, they're not gonna be like, hey, TikTok live. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. So now I'm going to shift pages a little bit here. So we're seeing inconsistencies from, and this is granted, I'm just sharing Jen Thompson's version of events that day. So obviously there are other people's perspectives on what happened that day as well, and what they saw happen. It's interesting that the boys, when they killed themselves, supposedly they were strapped with bombs. So I find that odd that they would kill themselves before they
I
were
didn't see any
completely
bombs on those pictures either.
they were completely out of ammo though. Like I mean, like it just doesn't seem like you'd think you'd keep going until you couldn't go anymore.
Yeah.
And one of the mothers of the child, Mark Taylor, who was shot 7 times, did her due diligence in investigating what the hell happened in Columbine. And so she's been on a couple of shows, back in the early 2000s and 2010s. And Mark Andrew has, it's very interesting the history you learn because this is not a huge town. And so like these parents know each other and they have, I believe it was Eric Harris had gotten in trouble with one of the boys and said he'd kill him. And the parents got all pissed. So they called the cops and they're like, listen, these boys, you need to do something. And I caught in the interview, like they were talking to the mom, and she's like, "We told the sheriff's department about Eric Harris's webpage 2 years prior to the Columbine shooting, and in there he talked about, um, you know, all sorts of things. But one thing that stood out to the most was that he was like, "And fuck you if you're a racist. If you're a racist, I wish you would get pregnant by someone you're racist against and then have to raise that child." Now, to me, it's felt like all of this testimony was that they were the racists. So they just, there's these weird things from his website that don't line up, but there's a key pivot moment in both of those boys' life. And it happens exactly a year before this shooting. And what happens is they get detained for breaking into a work van that belonged to an alarm agency. And they break into this work van. They get caught by the cops, and they don't get thrown into like jail for the night or anything like that. But they do get assigned to counseling and having to go to therapy and then having to write an apology letter. So pretty easy sentence, wouldn't you say, for something like that? And then you read in the personal library, and the guy goes, he said, it was Eric Harris's diary, in his own personal notes, not the apology note, uh, you know, I should be able to steal whatever I want and fuck those guys and, no remorse whatsoever. Um, and then, um, well, I'll just tell you, we'll go to this here. I'll add this to this is Donna Taylor. She's talking with the lawyer she had hired, John DeCamp, on the James Freeland show. This is 2011.
What was in those? Why would they be stealing them from us? And so this was a crime in itself to kept all these files from the families that had dead and injured children. They continue to go on. A number of them that still don't know this still go on while their children are dead.
So they sealed a bunch of records about these kids' past, which is very interesting.
Well, the truth is so horrible that some of them don't even want to know the truth, and you probably won't But in this case, the truth is that the shooters at Columbine had been raped during arrest, and then they were put on psychotropic drugs to try to control them.
Right, and what I heard was that it's not an isolated case in Colorado. That I'm not going to call it an epidemic of official rapes, but I have heard that it happens more often than people
I
care
can
to
prove
believe.
that it's epidemic. We've gone on to do background, and our background's even worse than that. We've learned that child trafficking going on in the county, people that are killed satanically by the child traffickers, has a little to do with, we haven't been able to completely do our investigation, but in the case of the JonBenet Ramsey, we see there's connections there. It's somewhat what John DeCamp wrote about years ago in the Franklin cover-up.
Right, the Boys Town Franklin cover.
Yeah, and lately we get to witness the Boy Scouts doing the same thing. It's institutional protection of pedophilic rapists.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be interested to hear what he has to say about.
He's going to be on Donna.
So the two boys were raped? By who?
The belief is that these two boys had been raped by the sheriff's department in Jefferson County and were being used as sex slaves. And I'm going to share you. Have you ever heard?
Fuck? How do you draw that short straw? What in the fudge?
We're going to go to back to the basement tapes. Now, mind you, the basement tapes have now been completely destroyed. And there is only a transcript that is left remain. So there's no more basement tapes. There are little clippets of it, and then transcripts are only left. Which to me, why would you destroy them? Why is that allowed to be destroyed? I mean, am I wrong thinking here, gentlemen? What's your opinions on that when you hear something like that?
I mean, why would you want to keep it out there? Because as technology gets better and people dive into this stuff, you want to give the people that will hunt this and figure it out. You don't want to give them crumbs. You want to blast this all the way. So when people do get interested in it and want to get awaken or whatever you want to call it, and they want to really dive in and start connecting the larger dots, you don't want to give those, because these people won't stop. They will want to bring this whole thing down and save the children, save the world we live in, make it right. It makes sense to get rid of all of that. Like, I'm not thinking they thought like that, but I mean, it makes sense nowadays where if they don't make everything redacted or make everything disappear where it's impossible to find because they still control the internet and everything else, like, there are people that just live for this and do want to try to figure out these scumbags. So I mean, it makes sense to get rid of all of this.
So this is interesting. So this is video from the basement tapes, and I want you to give it a listen here, because this is part of that whole they're their own little class, and obviously they had access to video cameras to record things, and it was very common. A lot of the interviews talk about this role playing that they would do throughout the year. So this is one of their role playing videos. It's been classified as here they were planning to shoot up the school, but I actually sat down and watched the video because I wanted to see it. It's like a cheesy, obviously, type of high school video that you would make with your buddies, and watch the premise of this. Now, this is called The Hitman. So this is a story about the hitmen being hired. And this is them going to their client right here. Let me see. Is it? Can you hear it, or can you see it on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Here we go. There's like a slow walk of them coming in. Eric Harris and Dylan. You guys hear cops right there?
We
I
don't
want
hear anything.
This is okay. So this is yeah, here. So this is the very intro into them talking to the guy that's hiring these two guys who are the hitmen. Okay. And the audio is completely muted. So you hear absolutely nothing until they walk up to these guys. And there's this weird music that just sort of blurs out what exactly they say. But tell me if you hear them say cops. You guys hear that?
Yep.
Yep. All right.
I'll pay anything. All right. $20 a day in school.
To me, that sounds like we hear you want to kill cops.
You know we can't have weapons on school grounds. That's fine.
That worked out well, that policy.
And I'll get him off the property. All right. We'll protect you on school then. Take away any bullies that are picking on you, whatever. And off school grounds, we can relocate this person. That'd be $1,000.
Okay, so that's the premise. Now, I could be completely off. I'm not. To me, that's sort of what the premise sounds like. What about to you guys?
Well, they definitely sound confident in the fact that, like, if they were being bullied, they're playing the parts of someone eradicating the bullies.
Yeah.
So I don't think that they are two individuals that are worried about being bullied.
Here is
They're like a messed up vigilante or
Yeah.
Now here is them talking to the person who's bullying them, and I mean, you'll just have to.
Thank you so much.
Goddamn piece of punk ass shit! Do not mess with that friggin' kid! If you do, I'll rip off your goddamn head and shove it so far up your friggin' ass, you'll be coughing up dandruff for 4 friggin' months!
I don't care what you say. If you ever touch him again, I will freaking kill you. I'm gonna pull out a goddamn shotgun and blow your damn head off. Do you understand?
You're gonna throw some serious threats, but you can't swear. Like,
Well, I just, it sounds to me like something you would say to a rapist, doesn't it? What's interesting is that the principal of Columbine was good friends and went to school in Georgetown with Bill Clinton, as well as well, don't take my word for it. Let's see, we'll share another clip because I feel like
did not inhale.
Let's see here. We'll share this tab. Add to stream. All right, this is Clinton and the principal.
Why didn't the principal get shot and hurt? How did he avoid everything? The principal and Mr. Clinton, were good friends the year before.
They were friends?
Yeah.
You don't. He didn't just meet him. You mean they were actually friends?
Well, they went to school on it, but as far as I'm concerned, when a president flies in to see a principal, there's got to be some kind of connection.
So that's an interesting connection. Also, with the people involved in this case, George Tenet, Michael Hayden, controlling officer of the NSA at the time, officer of the CIA at the time, Louis Freesh, controlling FBI at the time, Richard Dearlove, who was in control of MI6 at the time, all Knights of the Order of the Roman Catholic Church, Knight of Malta, Jesuit trained at Duquesne. All of these guys have the same tie to the Roman Catholic Church and the Knight of Malta, which was a Jesuit sect inside the Catholic Church. So I don't know what that means, but there was some very just weird vibes about how, I mean, these kids, they get caught robbing a van. They don't get charged. They don't do any time. They get caught with threatening notes on their websites. They don't get charged. They don't do any time. And all the while, they're getting passed around, supposedly, by the sheriff's department. Meanwhile, the head of the Catholic, or the head of the principal, or the head of the school there, the principal, is good friends with Bill Clinton. And then the soccer coach for Columbine, turns out that there was an article just published, I think it was like 2019, that the head coach, the soccer team out there, had been a pedophile for 30 years. For 30 years. So it seems like there's some very interesting things going on, that they may have stumbled across a sex trafficking ring because of using these two boys as the primary shooters. And it would explain being able to get them in a rage enough to take it out on people. I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on this? This is a very interesting turn.
But why not? It just doesn't make sense if these kids were used as push pillows. Like, why not take it out on the department? Why kill your peers and go that route? And I mean, like,
the whole school was booby trapped.
Unless they're the mind control thing like does have like some sort of ground where they're seeing like how far will this go, like, or how far can this go, as like a, I hate to say it, but almost like a social experiment, some like kind of thing. And it makes me, with this whole like bringing Bill Clinton involved, like as soon as you said that, like the first question that came to my mind is like, who got promotions after this?
Salazar, one of the agents working on that case, that for the FBI, ends up working for Obama in the White House. I forget what role, but he was a cabinet member. So there's high promotions within this case. Also, this is where John DeCamp comes into play, because he's the one that's doing the interviews of these people, and is the one that has belief he stumbled across this. Now, who John DeCamp is he stumbled across a sex ring out of Omaha, Nebraska, when he was suing a bank or not suing, but taking legislative action against a bank for false statements or fudging numbers. And it was the Franklin Credit Union in Omaha. And as he was going over their funds, he discovered money being siphoned through Boys Town, which was a town made for boys that needed adoption or were homeless, and that Franklin, I forget his first name, the guy that owned the Federal Credit Union, had been using this bank to host high parties and traffic children for prostitution at these parties. And he collected several witness accounts of boys that had been raped from Boys Town, that were sent out to DC, that were sent out worldwide, and then brought back to Boys Town. Some that went on several trips. Guys that had scars on their arms from ashes being put out on them by these fucks as they were getting raped, or being used as sex slaves. So this is what John DeCamp from Lincoln, Nebraska stumbles across as he's in discovery with the Franklin Credit Union. And he goes to put it on, I think it's like 60 Minutes or 2020 or something. And it's in the TV guide that's going to premiere. And then it's shut down like the day before and never aired. And he released it on his own a few years later. But it was never aired publicly because all of the major heads in Omaha had been associated at those parties and could be called out by witnesses. And he realized that this was an international global ring, called out Epstein Island before anyone else did. In 92, in 1992, he called out that there was this going on. And when he was hired by Donna Taylor to investigate the parents of Dylan and Eric Harris's, investigate the parents of Dylan and Eric Harris, he stumbles across some very similar things going on with Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, the principal of the school, and this Bill Clinton ring called the Yellowstone Club, which was, before Epstein Island, I guess that was the name, the Yellowstone Club, where they would have these sex parties. I'll play a clip here. It is on once again, this is on the James Freeland show.
For children,
investigation into what happened into the
daily, but
do that. But now John and Ron are going to explain to us exactly
They're
why,
gonna
because
explain
there's
it
this
all.
huge cover up. There's a giant sex ring, pedophile ring in the United States, and it's global. It's not just the United States, and it's the elites. They
Right.
share the same little boys. They share the same. They hobnob in the same groups. All right, I'll quiet myself up here. Now we've moved beyond. We've gone beyond the fact that he survived the shooting. That he blew the whistle. That there were SWAT teams on the roof. It wasn't a maintenance crew. There were actual SWAT teams, and they were firing through the windows. You sued the you sued the pharmaceutical company, won that decision. Now the investigation really got juicy for you guys. When was it that you found out about, what had happened to the two shooters? Because you can call. What I want to know is this, and then I'm just going to be quiet. Are Clyde Bolden Harris's parents allowed to be angry and upset at what happened to their children?
Absolutely.
Are they allowed to be outraged that their sons were raped?
I would think so. They should have the right to, but I believe they've been silenced and gag ordered, just like John DeCamp. So that's
John
what I
can't
think's going
speak
on.
about that then.
John?
Hello?
You've been gagged, so there's things that you can't talk about, right?
Well, I can give you my beliefs and observations and opinions, I guess.
Well, why don't we let you do that, and then we're going to let Ron give his, because Ron has a whole bunch of information, so we'll let you two get it right into it, because this is why. It's because
maybe I need to provide you a little information here.
Okay.
Yeah, I was the one that sued the drug company. I was the one that took up and revealed most of these things. I was the one that had.
This is a very quiet lawsuit that was won. I just want to give you guys a context of what he's talking about. This lawsuit. Do you remember, Prozac and all the antidepressants that were coming out mid 90s after Ritalin? They were starting to experiment. Prozac was probably the first one. They didn't require warning labels, but after Columbine, they did require warning labels. Interesting that, and that's because this man, John DeCamp, that's getting interviewed right now, is the one that won that lawsuit against the pharmaceutical companies. And those warning labels now include, if you're having, headaches, if you're having suicidal thoughts, if you want to kill yourself, if you want to kill others, please talk to the doctor and get it adjusted, right? Not required before Columbine. That's interesting little side note. So that's what he's talking about, because Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold were both on medications assigned to them a year prior to Columbine. After getting caught robbing the van, they're required to go on medication. So
to help hush them from the
maybe it's definitely interesting.
Basement tapes and located them and everything. I was the one. Oh God, I could go on and on. I got involved in the case very early when through one means or another, the family contacted me because I think they probably heard about me from the Oklahoma bombing and other cases of that nature across the United States, which I used to be very actively involved in. But anyway,
I just want to say this guy is the one gem out of the entire state of Nebraska. So that's the one compliment I'll give.
I mean, it's gonna really. I mean, I don't like that this is tied to my favorite state and football team, but I mean, not really, but I mean, it's Nebraska, so it's good. It scares me when it gets talked about in like Omaha and Lincoln because all I can think about is like Tom Osborne and whatnot, and I'm like,
all right.
I don't want to. I want to hope that, you know.
Well, it was out of Lincoln, Nebraska, where he discovered this. So yet another win for Lincoln. Well,
That's what I'm saying. Like, well, how deep does this run? Like, this would scare. Like, I don't want to. I can't go down that rabbit hole.
so I went and represented Mark. Mark was shot, 13 or 15 times, mostly around the heart, survived miracle after miracle after miracle, and is still alive today and is probably more sane if they'd let him out of there and let him have his mind back than somewhat. And it was me who first came up with the conclusion that after I had gotten this access to these basement tapes and done depositions of the parents of the two boys that did the killings and got information from them, put all these things together, that realized this is much bigger and more frightening than anybody imagines. And
he got to interview the parents alone under oath. That's valuable, right?
John DeCamp did?
Yes.
Is he alive still? Like,
no, he died in
he taken
2017.
out?
Died in 2017.
And the system here is protecting itself. In other words, the system, meaning the system of government. This is maybe the classic example in the last 100 years of, quote, the system protecting itself, because when this information was coming out that I was introducing into the case, and that's when I concluded that I had to sue, first of its kind in the history of the country, the drug company that was manufacturing these particular drugs. These two boys who did the shooting were being given and controlled by, and what had gone on. That's when all hell broke loose in making sure that things got hidden, controlled, and concealed. For example, the boys had been picked up for some minor incidents or investigation or something, and then they became, so to speak, controlled by the system, being used as kind of sex toys by the system. By that I mean law enforcement,
right,
officials, using them for sex and abusing them and so on and so forth, rather than, so they didn't end up prosecuted for other things, trading them one thing for another, sex for, we'll not arrest you for this or that. And the more I learned, the more I became convinced, so I went ahead and sued the drug company, and then I got replaced in the case after I was going to open the case up and make it much bigger, try and make class action on behalf of everybody and all kinds of things, and that's when I got fired from the case, which I think was a big mistake, but that's neither here nor there. I'm working very closely with Donna and everybody now. They came back to see me about 6 months ago from Columbine, and I believe the truth is going to come out, and it's far worse than most people imagine. I remember I was on my way from Colorado after we did a part of the court case there. I was on my way back to Nebraska to my office driving when I get called on the phone and told all the files in your case are being sealed. No one can look at them unless they have court authority, and the officers are on their way now to Lincoln, Nebraska, to your office to seal all your records and take them too. And indeed, they got back here to Nebraska quicker than I did on that day. It's 500 miles, roughly to the mile almost, from Denver to Lincoln, Nebraska, where my offices are. And they had gotten there, grabbed my records, scared the beans out of everybody in my office because they were 3 top patrolmen from the state of Denver ordered by the courts and Columbine and everything to go to my office and seal all records associated in any way. Just unbelievable. And they were sealed for, I think, 2 years, and then they added on another 5 or 7 years, and now they've added another.
This is the emergency broadcast system. This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test. This is our home investigation. If exposed, remove from the road.